Joshua chapter 10, verse 1. As soon as Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had captured the city of Ai and devoted it to destruction, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of the city of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were now among them, he feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than the city of Ai, and all its men were warriors. So Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent word to Hoham, king of Hebron, to Piram, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, "Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the people of Israel." And when the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with all their armies, and they encamped against Gibeon to make war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal, it's where Israel was staying in Gilgal, which is right next to Jericho, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites who live in the hill country are gathered against us." So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hand. Not a man of them shall stand before you." So Joshua came up upon them suddenly, having marched all night from Gilgal. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel. And he struck them down with a great blow at Gibeon, and he chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel, while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them, as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. At that time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jashar? The sun stopped in the midst of the heaven and did not hurry to set down for about a whole day. There has, underline verse 14, there has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. These 5 kings had hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. And it was told to Joshua, "The 5 kings have been found hiding in the cave at Makkedah." And Joshua said, "Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard it. But do not stay there yourselves. Pursue your enemies, attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter the cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand." When Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a great blow until they were wiped out, and when the remnant that remained of them had entered into the fortified cities, that all the people returned safe to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah. Not a man moved his tongue against any of the people of Israel. No kidding. Have you ever wished God would do your bidding? Have you ever said this to God? "God, you know what John did to our family. Get him." Have you ever wished that God would be at your beck and call to take care of your business? And from on high, God sends down lightning to get all the people that you want out of your life. Now, for many of us, it's a good thing we're not God, or there'd be a lot of dead people all over the place. But it's interesting, though, that many times we invoke God's help when we feel helpless. And when there are people in our lives that we wish were not in our lives, or we wish God had not put a scenario into our life, it's interesting how we ask God to remove those people or situations out of our lives. And sometimes he does, but many times he does not, because he's going after something in our own life. So let's look at it this morning. Number one, the Canaanite kings show up for war. The Canaanite kings show up for war. So if you're just joining us online or you're just here maybe for the first time this morning, let me give you a little background so you don't get lost. Ready? Moses used to be the leader of Israel. He's now dead. That's what this means, dead. He's dead. His assistant all those years, for 40 years, was a guy named Joshua. So now Joshua, because Moses is dead, is leading Israel, the nation of Israel. They have been wandering around for 40 years in the desert. Now they finally come to the Jordan River, and now they miraculously passed across the Jordan River as a nation. We looked at it about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And the very first city they come upon in the land of Canaan, which is modern-day Israel, is the city of Jericho, the most untakeable city in ancient days. It had 2 huge walls. It was built on a hill. How do you take that as with bows and arrows, and you don't have battering ram, you don't have anything. Battering ram's not even going to be made till the Romans come around in about 1,000 years later. So you don't take it. But God, miraculously, through the story of Jericho, tears the walls down, and they march in and take Jericho. Instantly now, all the rest of the kings of Canaan are in fear. If Jericho gets taken, we're done. Jericho gets taken, they go, what is happening? The next city on the road to the warpath of taking Canaan is the city of Ai, which wasn't as big as Jericho, but was still a strong city. They end up taking that. Now watch what happens. The next city is Gibeon. Gibeon has some studs in it. They were like the Navy SEALs of that day. They weren't like guys like, oh, I broke a nail. Where's my mani-pedi? These were guys like, we're going to war. And so Gibeon now realizes, man, if Jericho went by the wayside and Ai went by the wayside, we are not going to be able to stand before Israel or their God. So what we looked at last week is the guys of Gibeon, they come up with a plan. Let's deceive Israel into making a peace treaty with us. Israel's not allowed to make peace treaties with guys, with nations, or with people groups inside the land of Canaan, but they could with people groups outside the land. So the people of Gibeon fake out Joshua and Israel into thinking that they were from a long ways away, but they were actually neighbors inside of Canaan. So Joshua last week gets fooled. He makes a peace treaty with guys who said they were from a long ways away, but were actually neighbors. So he's deceived by them. Now watch what happens. Gibeon now is part of Israel. They've made a peace treaty with Israel. All the other kings surrounding Gibeon go, we're going to destroy you. The fact that you changed allegiances means you're going to die. So all the kings gather around Gibeon to go to war against them. Number one, the Canaanite kings show up for war. In fear, the people of Gibeon deceived Joshua into making a peace treaty with them after the Israelites had defeated Jericho and Ai. We looked at that last week in Joshua chapter 9. And let me re-clarify this for you. Ready? You're going to get deceived in this culture. We live in a culture of deception. We live in a culture of filters and Photoshop. Okay? There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to get sold a bill of goods, and it's not going to be that thing. I want to encourage you with this. Be a man or woman of your word. When you make a covenant with someone before God, even if they deceive you, stick to your covenant. If you bail, you will never see the goodness of God when you bail on covenants you made with God, even if you're deceived by other people. We live in a culture that's like, I'm out. But God's word says you stay in. Be a man or woman of your word, because here's the reason why. The only reason we bail is because we think this is going to be a ripoff for me. I'm asking you to stay in when you've sworn to God, because God will get your back. God can even make the evil that other people bring into your life good in your life if you stick with it. It might not be today, might not be next week, might not be next month, but God will get your back. It's the miraculous work of God that nobody else can do. So I encourage you, just like we learned last week with Joshua gets deceived, but makes a covenant before God. And even though he was deceived, he goes, I made a covenant before God. I'm not going to destroy the city of Gibeon. He held to his word. Now watch, all the other kings are gathering around Gibeon to go, if you flipped allegiances, we're going to destroy you. Hearing that Gibeon, which was a major city of Canaan with many fighting men in it, had made peace with Israel, the surrounding Canaanite kings unified to destroy it. A change in allegiance can bring about a change in affiliation. Listen, friends and family can become foes when faith to follow God is found. Ready? There are going to be many people in your life, both family members, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, kids, your people at work, that are going to leave you if you start to follow God. There are going to be people in your life who you thought, these are my closest people, this is my closest family, they'll never leave me. Understand that God is working in your life oftentimes through the difficulty of people who are closest to you. There's going to be people that are going to go, if you're going to follow God, I'm going to war with you. And you're going to go, what do you mean? You're my family, you're my mom. You keep following God, you're out of this house. Where am I going to go, Dad? I don't really care, but I'm not going to have that in my house. And you're going to go, wow, God, I thought following you was going to bring peace, not a bunch of chaos. Understand that just like before you came to know God, those people are still in that spot. In the same way you used to mock followers of God and go, dude, what are you doing? Oh, you need a crutch to get through life? Well, I don't need that because I'm not as emotionally problematic as you. You need a crutch to limp through life with your God stuff? Okay, but that's not going to be me. I don't need to believe in Mickey Mouse and fairy tales to get through life like you obviously do. Remember when you used to do that or when you used to think that about religious-y people or whatever? But then all of a sudden God opened your eyes and you go, man, I need a savior. And all of a sudden God transformed your life. And the people who are just like you now are not going to support you. In fact, many times they go to war against you. And there's going to be moments where you're going to want to give up. There's going to be moments where you're going to want to backtrack. But understand that sometimes family becomes foes when faith to follow God is found in your life. If you got your Bibles, turn to Matthew 10. It's the first book of the New Testament. Matthew chapter 10. Look at the words of Jesus on this subject. Hey, when I started to follow God, I lost friends. I didn't get invited to parties. Some girls wouldn't date me. They must have been ugly. Hey, there was times in high school where I was following God and people were like, dude, oh, you're the goody two-shoes kid? I don't need you around. Here's one of the reasons why. Listen to what I'm saying. Here's one of the reasons why. Because people don't want to believe that God is true. People don't want to believe that God actually changed your life, because here's the problem. When they start realizing, man, you would just be just like me, and all of a sudden God changed your life, all of a sudden they go, immediately they either have to do one of two things. Reject you because they can't let God be true, or they have to say, man, God must be true because I know you. So friends and family are forced into a position of saying, I either have to reject you or I have to change my life. And because people are prideful and arrogant, like we all are and were before God, we go, I got to get rid of you because I'm not following God if he's real. So people have to put you down to make themselves feel better. And look what Jesus says on this subject. Who better to speak on this subject than Jesus? Matthew 10, verse 32. Look at this. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge before my Father who's in heaven. So now Jesus is saying, hey, if you're going to follow me and you acknowledge me before men, you're not ashamed of me, you're not going to back down or wimp out, I'll acknowledge you before my Father in heaven. This is literally like the people who are going to be in heaven. But then look what he says. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny them before my Father who is in heaven. So here's what this means. It's tough to live for God. You might lose money, you might lose job, you might lose friends, you might lose your Twitter followers, you might lose some people. Sometimes gaining for God means losing in life. Sometimes gaining for God means there will be some things you'll lose in this life. You lose dates, you lose friends, you lose money. You'll lose. And in that day you'll go, I don't even know if it's worth it to follow God. But my encouragement to you is don't stop. Look what Jesus says. Look at verse 34. Do not think I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Well, that happens all the time. With or without Jesus, that happens. And listen right here, look at verse 30, look at verse 36. And a person's enemies will be those of his own what? Household. Whoever loves their mother or father more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves his son or his daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up his cross is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life, in other words, they just live for this life. I'm finding my life as I live. I want to live for this world. Whoever finds his life will lose it ultimately. And whoever loses his life for my sake in this world will find it. Wow. You want to know how to live your life the best right now? I can tell you how. I can't say that difficulty won't come your way. I can't say you won't get cancer. I can't say you won't go bankrupt. I can't say for the rest of your life you're protected from all bad things. Here's what I can say, that the true God who exists will walk you through the difficult times. I can say that. I can't say you'll be kept from difficulty. I can say that God who rules all things will walk you through difficulty. You want to know how to live in this world the best way you can? Is to live for God, and God will give you peace and joy even in difficulty. I pray God gives you prosperity. I pray God gives you financial resources. I pray for health for you. But my point to you is, if that doesn't come to you, at least in the way that you want it, God still is in your life. God still walks with you. God still gives you everything you need to have the best life you can possibly live in this world. When you live for God in this life, you get the best of this life now, and you get eternity forever, which is the best of all realities. If you just live for this world, a Twitter and your Facebook feed, you not only are paranoid and depressed in this life, but you lose the next as well. Not living for God gives you not really anything of joy in this world and nothing in the next. Living for God at least gives you peace and joy regardless of circumstances and eternity. That's why living for God is the best life you can live. And in this story now, watch. The city of Gibeon is surrounded by, used to be their friends. All the other kings, when they hear they've jumped allegiances into Israel, they don't go, congratulations, you're with Israel. They go, we're going to kill you. Don't be surprised when you jump on board with God and some of your closest friends become foes. Number one, the Canaanite kings show up for war. Number two, Joshua stands up for Gibeon. Joshua stands up for Gibeon. Seeing impending war, Gibeon sent messengers to Joshua for help. Instead of refusing to help people who had deceived him into a relationship and were technically not his responsibility, Joshua prepares for war. Watch this. Last week we looked at the people of Gibeon. They deceived Joshua into going, make a peace treaty with us so you don't kill us. Joshua is fooled into it. They basically get married as people groups. They get married. But Joshua's tricked into it. And guess what? Joshua sticks by his commitment. But now what happens is Gibeon asks Joshua for help. Here's the way it would have looked if I was Joshua. Ready? So Gibeon's under siege. All the 5 kings have sieged Gibeon. They sneak out a messenger. Gibeon and Gilgal are 20 miles apart in hilly country. A guy has to basically run a marathon to reach me as Joshua at Gilgal. Now imagine I'm Joshua and I'm there with marshmallows with my boys. I'm roasting marshmallows with my warriors 3,000 years ago. All of a sudden this guy comes running out of the darkness. Joshua, Gibeon needs your help. You got to come now, because all the 5 kings that we used to be aligned with, they've all turned against us because we jumped into agreement with you. We're now Israelites. We're part of your camp. We need you to come now. Wait a second. Wasn't it Gibeon, the people that deceived me into becoming friends? Sounds like you got some problems. Hope it works out. You know what's crazy in this story? Joshua has zero responsibility to go fight for Gibeon. They deceived him. If anything, he should be angry. You know what? This is God's judgment on you for deceiving me. I hope you get wiped out, because now I don't have to deal with you anymore. But you know what's crazy? Praise God that Joshua's a man of God, except other than your pastor. Because Joshua doesn't go, get out of here, go take care of your own business. You know what Joshua does? He sets a marshmallow down, and he picks up his sword, and he goes, boys, posse up. Let's go. And the guys get up, and they strap for war. And you know what's crazy about this story is that people that didn't have to get engaged went to go get engaged. They went after to help the weak, and they went after to help the oppressed. Taking responsibility for yourself and others who are weaker or in need is a hallmark of a godly man. Ready? We don't even know what masculinity is in our culture anymore. For crying out loud, a woman can call herself a man, and it goes against genetics. We don't even trust science anymore. We go by how we feel. Let me help you. God's word is very clear. If you're a man, there are two things incumbent upon you in masculinity. Ready? It's protection and provision. Your job as a man, especially a man of God, is you provide and you protect. And basically what that looks like is this. When you bust your butt and you spend your whole life working so that your family can survive. And if somebody breaks in the house, you don't send your wife. Or if you got a stud for a wife, at least fight alongside of her. Don't go, I'll call the cops. Hang on, I got you. I don't have good cell reception. I'll be back in a second. You won't get that on Twitter. You won't get that on your Facebook feed. I'm here to tell you from God's word, if you're a man, those are the two things that are pressed upon you as a man of God. If you got a family, you take care of that family. You don't leave them. You don't abandon them. You take care of those people. You take care of the weaker and those who are in desperation. If you leave your family, that's going to be your kids. And for those of us that grew up with just mom and she had to bust her butt to make our ends meet and all those kinds of things, you know, you bless mom or you bless dad or whoever if you grew up in a single parent home, because it's tough. But here's my encouragement to you. That doesn't have to be your future if you haven't gone there yet. And young men, you be a man of God. You take care of your family, you take care of those kids. And now I'm going to go one step further. Ready? Men of God don't just take care of what they're responsible for, they take care of others as well. True men of God protect those who are unprotected. They help the widow, they help the orphans. They don't look at the widow next door after her husband died or whatever and go, man, looks like you can't mow your lawn. Sucks for you. I got this sweet $3,000 mower though. This thing's pretty sweet. John Deere up in here. You know what? You take care of that lady on your cul-de-sac who lost her husband. You take care of those kids who can't afford the clothes for school because they're living with a single mom and she's got 3 or 4 kids. And you go, I can't afford to buy clothes. I can hardly keep us in this apartment. That's not somebody else's job. That's your job. You help out. You be the one. You be the one that goes and says, how can I help you, rather than, man, nobody's asked me. Because Joshua could have gone, man, it's not my problem. Sucks for you, Gibeon. Hope you don't die. But you know what? He goes, let's go. And I'm going to show you how difficult this journey was. It's 20 miles uphill. Look at this shot of topography. This is the topography of Israel, right by the place that they were sitting. So you see the Dead Sea right there? This is the lowest place on the face of the earth. If those mountains weren't there, the Mediterranean Sea would wash over that whole thing, and that you'd be almost 1,000 feet underwater if you were standing there at the bottom of the ocean, if it washed over it. Jericho's 800 feet below sea level. The Shephelah is to the left there. That's an area where the 5 kings were and where Gibeon was. I want you to see this. They had a 20-mile uphill journey in sandals, strapped for war, ahead of them. So they don't just go, oh, just jump on the Hayabusa and we'll be there in a couple minutes. You know, jump in the back of the Benz and we'll all just roll up bumping tunes. Oh, it's a freeway. It's not that big of a deal. No, this was a huge deal. They weren't right next door, and it wasn't an easy walk. Joshua could have easily gone, I ain't making that walk. You joking? Or he could have said this, okay, we'll be there in a couple days. Hopefully you guys are there. You know what? They make a marathon journey in one night, ready for war, running in sandals, uphill. It's like American Ninja Warrior. And this is the reason I say that. Look at Psalm 82, verse 4. It'll be on the screen. Psalm 82:4 says this, rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. There are going to be weak and needy in your life. Those that need your protection, those that need your provision. It's going to be your wife, it's going to be your kids, and it might be somebody else's wife or somebody else's kids if they have no husband at home or if they have no protection at home. You don't leave people to die. When somebody else's house is on fire, grab a hose. Men of God don't just go, not my business, not my zoo, not my monkeys, not my circus. Why am I getting involved in this? Nope, men of God go help. And men of God go die if they have to, because that's your job. Turn your Bibles to Proverbs 24. Right after the book of Psalms, Proverbs chapter 24. Proverbs 24, verse 10. Proverbs 24, verse 10. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Rescue those who are being taken away to death and hold back those who are stumbling towards slaughter. If you say, behold, we didn't know anything about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who keeps watch over your own soul know it? And will he not repay man according to his work? Don't go, I didn't know my next door neighbor was a widow. Man, I totally would have helped out. You knew. Don't make excuses. Men of God figure out where they can help and they go help. Don't say, I didn't know about it. You knew. Because God knows. God watches over your soul. He knows every thought you have, every motivation of your heart. And guess what? If you do the right thing, God will bless you. If you're always about yourself and your own business, hey, not my business, why would God bless you in your selfishness? Being over 20 miles away over mountainous terrain, even if Israel was coming, the Canaanite armies had no fear that they would come before Gibeon was defeated. So it's strapped for war, going 20 miles in the dirt uphill, that's at least a 1 or 2 day journey. But they bust it all in one night. And it says they came upon them suddenly. And the Canaanite armies were like, where did these guys come from? They came out of nowhere, literally. However, Joshua doesn't just try to make an effort, but sets out to get results. And his army travels all night fully equipped for war. Listen to me, young people, or if you're in your job, if you're in career right now, you're a teenager, you're a 20-something in here, let your pastor speak this into your life. What is worth doing for God is worth giving your best. Measure results, not excuses. We live in an excuse-making culture. You're growing up in an excuse-making culture. And what that looks like is this. Oh, dude, that's too hard. Why am I going to give my money to that? Why should I do that? Why should I get involved over here? Why? Or, oh, it's too hard. Oh, did I commit to that? Oh, sorry, I can't make it now. Oh, you need help with that refrigerator? Your back looks strong enough. You're good. I don't need to help with that. We live in an excuse-making culture. It's not working out for me. I don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to do it. My encouragement to you is the exact opposite. When you know something is what you should be doing, you give your best to it. You give yourself with excellence to everything you do. You're in school, give yourself with excellence to your schoolwork. God's given you a good brain. God's given you an opportunity to be involved in school. Do your best. Don't do your worst. Don't skate. Don't go C's, get degrees. Oh, some of you, you're laughing like, I didn't never hear that. Yeah, you did. You heard that. You said that to yourself when you were in college. drink some Red Bull, stay up all night, and get better grades. Do your best, not your least. God's worthy of your best. If it's worth doing for God, do your best, not your least. And that includes when you help other people. Number one, the Canaanite kings show up for war. Sometimes allegiances will change. And if you come to God, don't expect everybody to be on board. Sometimes people will be against you, even your own family. Number two, Joshua stands up for Gibeon. My encouragement to you today, my friends, is how are people going to know God's in your life if you only care about yourself? And especially you men, shame on you when you know you could help out and you don't. Don't make excuses, make results. Don't make excuses. Everybody has an excuse. Everybody can tap out. Everybody can do whatever. My encouragement to you is do what God built you to do, which is go take care of the weak and the needy. Be a man of God. Don't be a man of our culture. And lastly, God stops the sun. What? Yep. The Israelite kings show up for war. Joshua stands up for Gibeon. And lastly, God stops the sun. Having said he had given them, past tense, into Joshua's hands before the war, God's past tense commitment brings Joshua present tense courage. Against staggering numbers, Israel fights all day. Listen, many times divine promises are not effected without human performance. Listen, if God's promised you something, God says, hey, you stick in your marriage, I'm going to help you work your marriage out. But you're like, I want to bail. This is just too hard, or things look better on the other side of the fence or whatever. You want to get out. My encouragement to you is you stick in there, you stay in there, you honor God, be the man of God. You're supposed to be the woman of God. You're supposed to be the wife and the husband and the kid you're supposed to be in that marriage and that family. God will bless that home. But if you bail, why would God get your back on bailing? Because it shows you have a character weakness, which means I committed to something, but I'm not going to do it. So why would God bless character rebellion? But you stick in there, God will bless that. So now Joshua backs up a promise that he was even deceived into, but he still backs it up. Why? Because he committed to God. And now God is going to do a miracle for Joshua. Why? Because Joshua has done the right thing. As the Amorites flee, God kills many of them with hail. Sucks to try to get away from God. So I don't know if you've ever been in a hailstorm. I have, being from the Midwest. When golf ball or almost softball size ice blobs come down, I mean, it pummels cars, it breaks windows, it can even break through houses if it's big enough. Imagine you just think you're fighting Joshua and God goes, I got something for you. And you're running from Joshua and God's picking you off one by one with hail. But that's not even the craziest part. While the Amorites had banded together to destroy Israel, God used their coalition to more effectively wipe them out because they're all in the same spot. Sometimes the plans of the wicked become the prosperity of the righteous. Woo! I wish I had time to preach on this. I don't, but I will point this out to you. Ready? Sometimes you're going to feel ganged up on by people with evil intentions. You'll be amazed how God will work even the evil people bring into your life for your good if you're a man or woman of integrity. If you stick to your commitments, God will honor you. If you bail, God will not get your back. You're on your own because you made your own call. With the night coming, Joshua asked God to stop the sun. And the Hebrew word there literally means to cause it to wait or to cease moving. It's like when you tell somebody, like you're playing tag, freeze tag, or whatever, you go, stop. Everybody goes, heh. It's that the Hebrew word means go, her. I'm sure it made that sound too. Her. Sun putting on the brakes. He asked God to stop the sun and moon for about 12 hours so they could finish the battle. As the sudden stoppage of the earth's rotation would destroy everything off the face of the earth, some view this as poetry. However, Joshua clearly asks for and receives a supernatural act. So watch, I'm a science guy. I grew up in hard science, biology, all the hard sciences. And so when I read that story, I go, that didn't happen. because that would cause the whole earth, you're moving at about 1,000 miles an hour right now. You don't even realize it. You go, I'm super slow. Actually, you're moving at 1,000 miles an hour. The earth in its rotation is going 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Okay? It's the reason you don't sense it as we sit here is that same reason when you drive in your car 50 miles an hour and you're holding a soda or whatever, and it's like, oh, everything's good. Except when you hit a tree, and then everything goes, whoa, and it all comes slamming to the front. If God did this miracle, he would have to stop the earth from rotating to the sun. So it stops up in the sky. That means the earth stopped rotating, and it continues in its elliptical path around the sun. But if you jammed the earth to stop, the oceans would literally sweep over the earth and destroy everything. We'd literally be smoked if God stopped the rotation of the earth. Water would come across the earth at 1,000 miles an hour, and everybody'd be dead. So you look at that and you go, that doesn't happen. If God were to slam everything stopped. But I want to encourage you with this. The Bible directly speaks that God did a supernatural act that's never happened before. And here's the reason for that. The laws of physics are not laws to God. You know the reason we have the law of gravity? Because it's a law to me. Why? Because I'm under the law of physics. God put the laws of physics in the earth because he's the lawgiver of physics. He can choose to violate those at any time he wants, and it doesn't affect any other laws of physics. Jesus walked on water. He violated the laws of physics. Why? Because he's God. God can bring dead things alive. How can God do that if literally life has left the body? When the cells are dying and decayed, if I'm dying in the grave, how can God put life, how can he re-life me? It breaks the laws of science. But it only breaks the laws of science for me to do that. It doesn't break the laws of science for the lawgiver who is God to do those things. So can God stop the earth and keep the water still and keep everybody from flying off into space? Yep, he absolutely can. He can stop the earth, keep all the other laws, complementary laws of physics in place, and have it move around the sun until Joshua got done with his battle, and then it spins again. For this reason, look at this. I close with this. Colossians 1:17. Here it is, boom shakalaka, right in your face. By him all things were created. I'd love to get into this. We don't live in a multiverse. The reason we call our world a universe, a uni meaning one, is because we don't sense any other universes. There's not a multiverse, it's a theory to try to get away from the fact that our universe is not specially created. It is specially created. That's why we call it a universe, not a multiverse. For this reason, by him all things were created. Didn't come out of nowhere, God built it all. In heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things what? Hold together. You know the reason we have the laws of physics is because there's a lawgiver. The reason you broke the law going 56 and a 55 is because somebody wrote it down as a law for you to follow. Same thing with physics and the laws of the universe. Why do we sense laws in the world? Because God, the lawgiver, made those. He can break those at any time he wants without affecting any other laws of physics. Amen. There we go. That's all I got for you.